2024 is going to go down as the year the muscle car changed forever. Why? Because feast your eyes on this. This is the 2024 Dodge Charger. And no, I'm not kidding. Two-door Charger. The Challenger name has been retired seemingly, and the two-door and the four-door muscle cars are going to get the exact same name. Before we dive into the specifications as far as what we know and what we don't know, the biggest thing that we do know is, as we all expected, and as I have been saying for quite some time, the gasoline model is coming back. But not in the way that we might have expected or some might have hoped. But first, let's dive into the first Charger that we are going to get. That is going to be the electric one. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's start with production timing. The reason it's going to be a 2024 Charger is because it's actually going on sale pretty soon, as long as you want a crazy fast or a bonkers fast two-door electric Charger. Those are the models going on sale first. Then starting next year in 2025, we're going to get gasoline two-door versions, electric four-door, and gasoline four-door versions as well. A rational person might be wondering, what does the four-door Charger look like? Well, rather unfortunately, we will have to wonder for a bit longer because Dodge did not give us any details on that. Now, if you want the ultimate in bonkers from Dodge, we all knew that they were going to do this, then the Banshee model is coming after all of that. That's going to be the 800-volt two-door EV with bonkers fast numbers. We don't know anything, but lots of rumors have been pointing to either 800 or 1,000 horsepower. So if you're looking for the ultimate in absolutely crazy American muscle car electric style, you want to wait for that model. Let's dive into what we're going to get first. We're going to get two different power levels first, 496 horsepower or 670 horsepower. So again, Dodge is really going after big American two-door muscle car. Now, that big part is important because this is a really big two-door vehicle. It is 206.6 inches long. That's about a foot longer than a Tesla Model S. It's actually about the size of a Mercedes-Benz EQS sedan. Yes, sedan, and we're talking about the two-door Charger. We don't know what the four-door model is going to look like or how long it's going to be, but my guess is it's probably going to be ever so slightly longer than this version. And of course, it's not just long, it's also relatively wide. It's nearly 80 inches wide with a relatively high roofline as well. So definitely significantly taller than a Model S, wider than a Model S, way longer, and it's going to have a 121-inch wheelbase. This is a big, classic American muscle car. Think 1970s in some dimensions. Now, obviously, the electric drivetrain is the reason we can get a coupe and a sedan that's this big, because the way North American fuel economy legislation works, it's kind of tricky to do that on gas. Before we get to the interior, let's roll through some of the specifications they sent out. All versions are going to have a 100.5 kilowatt hour battery pack. The curb weight comes in just under 5,900 pounds, so this is a pretty heavy vehicle. It looks like it's going to have a double wishbone suspension up front, of course, fully independent suspension in the back, just as you'd expect, and some truly massive 410 millimeter brakes, both in the front and in the rear, in the Scat Pack with Track Pack. Yes, they are calling one of these versions the Scat Pack, so we're going to get RT, we're going to get Scat Pack, and then we're going to get Scat Pack with Track Pack, which is quite a mouthful there. The Scat Pack is going to be the one that gives you 670 horsepower. 630 normally, 670 horsepower if you choose the boost option. The RT is going to give you 456 horsepower, 496 horsepower with the boost option. Some of the terminology that Dodge will be using here is a little bit confusing. For instance, they say that the Daytona RT comes with a standard direct connection stage 1 upgrade kit, which is what gives you that extra horsepower. And they're saying that the Daytona Scat Pack is delivered with a stage 2 kit that gives you the extra horsepower on that model. It sounds like future models will actually have those as options. So right now, if you're an early adopter for the Charger EV, you will get that extra oomph. If you buy one later, then you're going to have to pay extra for that. And in case you're wondering, they have a name for that boost button. It's going to be the Power Shot button. You'll find that on the steering wheel. Now, getting back to the specifications, here's another crazy specification. We're going to get staggered Goodyear Eagle F1 Supercar 3 tires, 305 35 R20s in the front, 325 35 20s in the back. These are some seriously wide tires, and this is all because of the curb weight. Again, about 5,900 pounds, but also because they want this to be the fastest muscle car ever built, is what they're saying. And they are saying that the Charger Daytona Scat Pack will cover the quarter mile in 11.5 seconds. That is definitely a solidly impressive number. To make sure that it sounds just as insane as that 11.5 second number when you're at the drag strip, they are going to be including the Fratsonic chambered exhaust. That's a feature that a lot of folks weren't sure if they would make it to the Charger or not. It's definitely going to be there. We don't know exactly what it will sound like, the production version that is, but it definitely sounds like it screams like a Banshee when we're talking about the pre-production models that we have all heard. And in case you're wondering, there are a bunch of different drive modes, donut mode, drift mode, some unique drag race modes, etc. And of course, the dual motor setup is going to be standard on all of the EV models. Now let's dive into the gasoline versions, because this is clearly going to be where the bulk of the sales will come from. The V8 is dead. That is the first piece of bad news here. And to be honest, I think it's the only piece of bad news. This is not going to sound like the old Charger and old Challenger did, but honestly, it's probably going to be better for everybody, because the standard output engine is going to deliver 420 horsepower. That was pretty expected. What wasn't expected is that we actually get even more power out of this engine in the Charger than we find in the Ram currently. So in the Ram, we get 540 horsepower. In this, we get 550 horsepower. Unlike the EVs, which they're saying will run 0 to 60 in as little as 3.3 seconds, they haven't given any performance estimates on the gasoline engines just yet, but they have said that they're going to call them the 6-pack engines. So we're going to get 6-pack high output and 6-pack standard output. I am actually a little bit surprised they didn't bring back the Slant 6 name, because most inline 6s, especially in passenger cars, are actually installed at an angle, and much like the BMW lineup, they're pretty much at 30 degrees or so. So just about as slanted as the original Slant 6 for the exact same reason. It's all about making it fit under the hood there. Now, we, again, don't have many details at all on the gasoline model, and they would not show us a gasoline model, mind you. So some of this is going to be speculation, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that the front end design is going to be pretty darn similar, with just some slight changes into the air intake. Obviously, the gasoline engine is going to need more air going through there for cooling. The front end could change just a little bit as well. But when we look at the styling of the Charger, it looks shockingly like the outgoing model. There's just one key difference that we haven't talked about. This is actually going to be a hatchback. The hatchback design makes a lot of sense because it allows for an enormous cargo area, nearly 23 cubic feet behind the rear seats. And of course, you could fold down the rear seats, and Dodge says you could stuff an entire set of track tires behind the first row, thanks to this hatchback design. And keep in mind, these are some seriously big wheels and tires. Good luck lifting them into the cargo area, but the cargo area is definitely big enough to hold them. What this bears for the 4-door model, we don't know, because I'm guessing it's probably not going to be a hatchback, although I would love to see one. A 4-door, 5-door, I guess you'd say, big hatchback, that would be absolutely epic. Now let's roll through the rest of the photos and talk about some of the things that I noticed here. The first thing is we get an aero wing effectively up front, in addition to a front trunk, which is kind of interesting. So this front end is not as low as it would appear. Keep in mind, again, this is a really big coupe. So because the front end was designed for the inline 6 and it's relatively large and upright, we get the storage area in there, even though there's also the electric motor, and we have that aero treatment where air can go in through the grille and then up and over the hood. Now, speaking of the grille, you'll notice no traditional Dodge logo. Well, actually, that's not true, because this is a traditional Dodge logo. It might be illuminated by red LEDs, but this is essentially the same Fratzog logo that they used from 1962 to 1976. What's a Fratzog? No one knows. Apparently Dodge just made the name up, but that's what they call this logo design. Whether or not the logo ends up a hit remains to be seen, but it certainly gives me some Isle of Man vibes. Now, on the back of the Charger, thankfully, they kept effectively the racetrack taillights, which has been a distinctive feature of the Dodge brand for a few years. Now let's take a look at the interior. This has stayed relatively true to the concept, just modified for production, of course. And there are some interesting touches here that I hadn't quite expected. This is riding on the new Stellantis large car platform that's also going to be underpinning a next-generation Dodge Durango and a bunch of other products. And that's, of course, why we saw those bodies in white with the transmission tunnel. This is going to preview a new set of steering wheels, buttons, switches, knobs, etc. The buttons and switches on the doors, those look kind of familiar. We've seen those in the Grand Cherokee before, but we do have a modified steering wheel that kind of has that squircle or square wheel kind of look there. We get a new big LCD instrument cluster behind it and more of a horizontal theme to the latest Uconnect software on the dashboard. Obviously, this one is showing us some of those race performance pages. We then have some touch controls below that for things like the climate control, so no physical knobs there, but we do get independent touch controls. You don't just have to use the touchscreen. The shifter, that is kind of an interesting thing there. It kind of looks like an emergency brake or a handbrake kind of thing. That's definitely a very distinctive style for this vehicle. We have the power button below, and then we get a red interior, so the rest of that seems pretty normal. Pretty aggressive sport seats, and definitely a lot of nice touches on the dashboard. Dodge showed us how the batteries are going to be arranged in the platform, and yes, again, it does have a transmission tunnel, so this is not a dedicated EV platform, but it was designed for both kinds of drivetrains from the beginning. There are obviously going to be some compromises here and there, however. Now, the interesting thing is that the upcoming Banshee model is going to be an 800-volt platform EV, so it's not going to share very much with these existing EVs. It's actually going to be kind of a different setup there. So what do you all think? Are you excited about the Dodge Charger? Are you sad that the Challenger name was dropped and that everything is going to be 2-door and 4-door Charger? Are you also sad that so far we have not heard any rumors about a Chrysler 300 coming back? So it does appear that the big sedan and the big coupe are going to be Dodge only, at least for the moment. Personally, I'm really interested in the new inline 6 engines because even the base version is going to give you performance levels that are pretty similar to the old 392 engine. The new inline 6 is lighter. We get a lot of torque right at low RPMs. It's going to be able to get all-wheel drive. That's one long rumor that we have not been able to confirm, but pretty sure that's going to be true. Sounds like we're going to be able to get all-wheel drive in the high output and the standard output version of the engines. So this is going to be the kind of muscle car that we couldn't really get before. The previous generation of the platform supported all-wheel drive, but not every version got it due to some packaging constraints and some just decisions around exactly where they should spend their R&D money. But with this generation, they're really going after a large, in-charge vehicle that has a lot of modern touches to it. The electric side, the new inline 6 turbocharged engine, etc. This is really an interesting era for the muscle car. And again, fantastically huge. I'm really, really interested in that because this is one of the longest vehicles available in North America that's not an SUV. Or a pickup truck, of course. I'm talking about cars here. 206 inches is a really, really big car for the 21st century. Let me know what you think about all that. And are you interested in one? Are you going to put a pre-order in on one? Are you going to wait for one of the inline 6s? Given the delivery schedule here, I should be driving one of these before the end of the summer, so be sure and stay tuned for that video. And again, sound off, let me know what you think. See all of you later.